So I have, over the years, shared with you all about my experience with other Christians and how difficult I found that at times when I went to a Baptist college, university, and people were not acting like they knew who Jesus was, but they said that they did. And that was really hard. So I've been watching since then to try to find people that I really resonate with and that they kind of model and give this example of the kind of life that I think that true Christ followers should be living. It's not just about following rules, right? It's about having a relationship with Jesus. That's why he came on earth, so that we could know him and God through his life. So here's kind of what I found that I think that believers that are getting things right in their life possess these kinds of characteristics. They are in process. They don't feel like they've arrived. They don't feel like they're perfect. They don't feel like just because they know how to follow rules, they've got everything right. No, they're in process, which means that they're open. Have you ever known anybody that's closed off and they don't really make any progress with anything, do they? But people that are open, especially when God is calling them or challenging them or showing them a different way to go and not providing resistance, I think that type of Christ follower is a good one. People that are growing in their faith. Have you ever seen somebody that says, yes, I believe in Jesus? Somebody shared a thing on Facebook this week that Trish read to me. And this pastor goes to lunch with the family after church one Sunday. They invite him over. And then after he goes home, the wife that invited him over notices that one of her spoons is missing. She thinks the pastor stole her spoon. Now let me tell you, pastors typically aren't thieves, right? And so she doesn't really say anything because he's like the pastor, but she's missing a spoon after his visit. And so about a year later, they invite him back over, and he comes over and has a nice meal with them again. And the wife says to him at some point during the meal, she's like, Pastor, I really have to know, did you steal my spoon? And he said, no, I put it in your Bible. How can we grow with Jesus when we're not in his Word? How can we? You cannot grow if you are not studying his Word. People that are in process, I think, that are great Christ followers, they're learning, they're trying, they're succeeding because they never have any issues in life. That's what that word says, right? They're failing. How many of you feel like a failure at times? Yeah, man, but that's okay, because as long as we recognize that we're forgiven by God because of Jesus' blood on the cross, as long as we realize that, then we can get up and we can tell him, you're right, Jesus, you're right. That's what that word repent means. It just means agreeing with God. That he's right and we're wrong. And then, you know what we do? We try again. And we might fail again. But we know he's forgiving. We come back to him and we repent. And it can happen over and over and over again. That's what a process is, isn't it? Something that can happen again and again and again. These types of people, I think, are great Christ followers. And when you find people that are like this, there's something different about them, isn't there? Because following Jesus should make an incredible difference in our lives, guys. It should make a huge difference. We shouldn't just dissolve into the woodwork or act like everybody else around us. It should make a big difference. Now, before you become afraid of that, we're going to learn some things today. Paul's words to the Philippians. He's explaining to them things that they already know, but he's reminding them of the things that they need to remember in order to live confident, Christ-centered lives. Because as we continue a process like this, and I'm telling you, your faith will make an incredible difference. Not just to you, but to people around you. So Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 and on. We're kind of picking up from where we left off last week. Philippians chapter 2. If you're not sure where Philippians is, it's towards the end of your paper Bible. Otherwise, it's got one L and two P's. And three I's. Three P's, thank you. Because there's one at the beginning, huh? Yeah. I always spell it wrong because I think that there should be two L's and two P's. But there's not. There's just one L and two. Okay, you guys find it?
Yeah, 2. We're now on to...
All right, here we go. Verse 12. Paul's continuing to inspire and encourage the Philippians, this church that he loves. He says, my dear friends, therefore, my dear friends, these are the people that you could translate that word as beloved, my beloved friends, as you have obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, because remember, he's in jail someplace else and he's writing to them, but as you've always obeyed, he says that your salvation has made a difference, and it's done. The difference is shown through being obedient to God. As you've always obeyed, continue on, now even more in my absence. Continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Continue to work out your salvation. See, salvation isn't something that when we put our faith in Jesus and what he did on the cross, that stops. I am changed. That's great. I've got the rubber stamp on my passport to heaven, and as soon as the ticket collector comes through, I've got access to it. No, he says, continue. What God worked into you, you need to work out of you. Work out your salvation. Now, sometimes it's easy to slide into a misunderstanding of what this word work means. Because if we're not careful, what we'll do as human beings is we'll say, I've got to work good works to prove my salvation. And by doing so, I will gain God's favor. That's not what he's talking about here. He's not saying that your works lead to your salvation. He's saying that salvation in you leads to working out the things that God worked in. And he says, continue to do that. Again, we're talking a lot about processes. Processes are some of my favorite things to talk about, even, it's weird that way. But this word for continue, I don't know if all of the translations that you all are using use that word continue, but I want to give you a little bit more insight into that word. How many of you have ever worked in a mine? No? Okay. How many of you have ever harvested crops? Have you? A few of you? Yeah, so okay. We're a little bit more agricultural than we are mining at this place in the nation. But the word continue really refers to those two activities. Because as you're working in a mine, you are working to go into it to gather the precious stones or coal or whatever it is that you're mining. And you go back and forth, bringing those important things out, the valuable things out. Just like in a field, you go out and you harvest the field. And in today's world, the tractors are programmed with GPS and all that, so you don't miss one stalk, right? The word continue here means that our responsibility is to try to gather as much out of the mine or as much out of the field as possible that's beneficial and valuable. It's not a one-time thing. It's a process. He's saying, folks, continue to work out what God has worked in. Work out what God has worked in. Work out what God has worked in. There are going to be times when you get it right and good things happen. And there's going to be times when you get it wrong, but go back into that mine, go back into that field, and continue to draw everything possible of value out of those experiences. Because the salvation that God's put in your heart should make a difference in what comes out of your mouth and the behaviors that you have and the attitudes that you exude. All of those things are part of this. So live better, folks, he's saying. Live better. And if you're like me, and you've tried, and you've failed, and you've tried, and you've failed, one of the greatest concerns at this point is what? I'm not good enough. I can't possibly be good enough. But remember, it's not about the work. It's about what God's doing. And in case you forget, look at this next verse. 13. This should take all of the pressure off of ourselves that we place on to make sure that, oh, we're doing good works, we're doing good works, we're doing good works, because it's not us that's doing the works. According to Paul, he says in verse 13, for it's God who works in you. Literally, divine power for people that have put their faith in Jesus lives inside of you. Divine power, God's power inside of you to help you, excuse me, to help you work out what He's worked in. And what has He worked in? He says, God who works in you, He's worked in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purposes. Paul's saying that your will changes when you put your faith in Jesus. Your will changes. And your actions change when you put your faith in Jesus. What do they change for? God's good purposes. Does it always feel like that? No. No, because we're in a battle. We're going to talk more about that later. But God is working in you. God has worked to change your will. God has worked to change your actions in order to fulfill His good purposes. So then he says, we're going to skip verse 14. Because come on, that's a stupid verse. I hate that verse. I think grumbling and complaining is just one of those natural things that we as humans do, don't we? He says, do everything without grumbling and complaining. And I want you to know, thankfully, that the emphasis that he's writing this sentence in is not on grumbling and it's not on complaining. You know what it's on? There's not many other words in that sentence. So either doing, or it's on or it's on without, or it's on everything. What do you think it's on? What do you think the emphasis of that is? Everything. Dang it. We gotta do everything? The emphasis on as we live our lives, as we have conversations, as we do our work, as we help our children, as we serve our parents as kids, whatever it is, anything and everything, we're supposed to do it without grumbling or without complaining. This is a motivation kind of aspect of this, right? Why is that important? That we do everything without grumbling or complaining. Because everybody grumbles and complains. And we're just like everybody else when we grumble and complain. Imagine a world where everybody that said that Jesus was their Lord and Savior never grumbled or complained. Would that not turn people's heads that didn't know Him?
I just have to say, you can't complain, you can't think negatively and positively at the same time. So like, can you grumble in your heart and praise God at the same time?
Yeah. It's hard to do, isn't it?
You can't.
The love of God is rich indeed. Right? It doesn't work. And honestly, we have so much to be thankful for. That everything that we should do, we should have the spirit of gratitude and appreciation and thankfulness. Because we know that no matter what happens here, Jesus is with us. And if things don't turn out here the way that we thought that they would, we have something much better than here to look forward to there with Him. It says, do everything without grumbling and complaining, because when other people see you doing that, their minds will be changed about who we say God is. Because what does grumbling and complaining say about God?
It's a bad example.
Absolutely. I know better than you, God. I should have gotten that promotion. I should have had that opportunity instead of them. I'm a much better. See, what it's saying about God is that He's not good enough. He doesn't have your best interest truly at heart, and you don't have enough faith that He truly knows what He's doing. That's the danger. That's the danger in it. Do nothing in grumbling and arguing. Verse 15, and he says, here's the rest of that part, right? So that you may become blameless and pure. So that you may come blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, so that you should become blameless and pure. I just told you that. Like, if all of the people that believed in Jesus were people that lived their lives in gratitude and appreciation, thankfulness and encouragement and love, instead of grumbling and arguing and complaining, and your political candidate is lousy and mine's better, and whatever it happens to be, especially in the social media realm, it's so easy to grumble and complain, isn't it? And maybe you're not doing it publicly, but I promise you, this week you will see something that somebody else is doing and you'll be like, well, aren't they just so-and-so? But when we live a life of encouragement and generosity and winning gratitude and thankfulness, then we become stand-out people that are blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Do you recognize that we are living in a warped and crooked generation? When right is inclusive of everything that we know God says is wrong, it becomes an issue. He doesn't say that you might be separated from all of that warped and crookedness, does it? Is that what it says? It says in a world of that. In a, not isolated and insulated from the world, but sitting next to them, standing beside them, loving in spite of them. Because the only thing that will show straight is something straight, right? You know what it means to be warped? Those of you that have ever gone, and I'm sitting in a room where the majority of people in it are female, who probably don't go to lumberyards that often. Not that you're not capable of building things at all, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that most guys have this experience because they probably went with their dads. The women in the room may or may not have, I don't know. But if you have, you would go to your local hardware store looking for wood to buy, to build something with, and you buy the 2x4s. But what do you do with the 2x4s? You hold them up, and you look down them, and you try to make sure that they're straight. Because if they're not straight, they're warped. And if they're warped, they're not going to measure the way that you need them to measure or do the things that you need them to do. So you hold. Anybody ever done that? I mean, a few of us have. Yes?
Once or twice.
Once or twice? Because if you buy warped wood, it's like, you get it at home, you're like, dang it, it's warped. But what shows the warp? Something straight, right? Sometimes it looks okay to your eye, and you get it home and you put it against a straight edge, and it's not straight. One of the things that my dad was real handy. And so he has all kinds of tools and all kinds of stuff, and he built all kinds of things, and I'm not handy. And so I would try to help him, though. I was a pretty good assistant. He'd say, hand me the wrench, and I would know what that was, and I'd hand it to him. And one of the things that I can remember very vividly doing is he was using a level. And levels are usually about 3 feet long, and they've got little bubbles in them so you can kind of see, whether you're plumbed straight across or not. You don't want to be crooked, you want to be straight across. And these things have like straight edges on them so that you can measure something against them to make sure that it's actually straight. It's hard to level something that's crooked. And I was bringing it to him because he needed it for something and I dropped it. Okay. Some of you are like, so what's the big deal? Others of you are like, ah! Like, that is the worst thing you can possibly do with one of those, because if you drop it, it can bend, and if it's bent, it's not going to tell you what's warped, or it's going to tell you everything that's straight is warped. It's a problem. Paul is telling the Philippians, stop complaining, stop arguing, live like one of God's own children. And in such doing, you will be able to stand straight in a warped society, showing them how far off the gap they are. Not because we're better than them, but because we all need a Savior. And they do too. And they have no way of knowing what they need unless they have something to reference it by. Amen. Thank you. He says, then you will shine like them among stars in the sky. If you pulled out your phone, and some of you are on your phones, if you pulled it out in the daytime and looked at the screen, would it hurt your eyes?
Yeah.
Maybe if you held it really, really close. But if it's midnight and you've been asleep for a couple hours, and somebody calls you, and you wake up, and you grab your phone, what happens then? It's too bright. You say, why are you calling me? Why are you calling me in the middle of the night? Absolutely, yes. Decline. The darker it is around us, the brighter we should shine, folks. Like, the brighter we should shine. You can't walk out on that deck right there and see the stars in the sky, but they're there right now. Because the sun's out. But at midnight, it's a totally different story, isn't it? God is calling us to shine brightly in a dark place. He's calling us to stand straight in a warped and crooked place. Why? So that everybody might see Him and might know Him through it. And He says, as you hold firmly to the Word of life, what's the Word of life? The Bible! God's Word! Oh, there He's telling me to read my Bible again. Darn that, Pastor. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. Paul cares greatly about these people. He wants them to finish well. He wants them to do good things. He wants them to get this right. He wants them to be the shade that's straight and shiny, kind of merged together in one.
The shape.
Could have gone a whole different way, guys. That's what we got. He says, I just want you guys to do well in this, because it's what matters. And then he says, he closes this section out, even if I'm being poured out like a drink offering, even if I've served you with my entire life, if I'm being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I'm glad and I rejoice with all of you. So too, you should be glad and rejoice with me. Here's what I learned about drink offerings this week, last week, because we don't really know a whole lot about it. We just don't have that whole sacrificial thing, right? But the drink offering was something that was poured over the major offering. It was kind of like the finishing touch, but it really wasn't the main event. The main event was the big sacrifice that was being made. The drink offering was just poured over it, kind of like I'm going to put some teriyaki sauce on some burgers later today with a little piece of pineapple that I've grilled up and have, you guys getting hungry yet? Yeah, and that's kind of like just the finishing touch. Paul's life, of all people, he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. He's saying, my life is insignificant. I'm just a finishing touch. I'm just a teriyaki sauce that you spread on top. Your lives and your efforts and your faith, that is the main thing. That's the main thing. How humble is this guy? And we should strive to be the same. So let's get back to how we started this. I said, when we have put our faith in Jesus, it should change everything about our lives. It should not only change everything about our lives, but it should also make a huge difference because we have Him working inside of us. We don't have to be afraid of anything. We don't have to worry about challenges from anything because He's with us and He's in us and He's helping us live our lives. If anybody should have reason to get excited about something, it's people that have their faith in Jesus. We as a church should be so excited that there's standing room only in this building because we want people to hear about Him. You can admit it. We have every reason to live lives so transformed and so inspiring and so bold and so hopeful and so helpful because we can be bright lights in a dark place and straight edges to help society see what they're missing. Not to hold it over their heads, but to see what they're missing. And we aren't in it alone because He works inside of us. So we've got to work out what He works in, right? Work out what He works in. Work out what He works in. He's worked His salvation into our hearts when we've accepted His authority in our lives. And why do we accept His authority in our lives? Because we know that without Jesus living the perfect life, the life that didn't have to be transformed inside like ours does. He lived a perfect life and He gave it up as a sacrifice because I can't live that life. Can't. And they said, hey, Graham, I'll take your crunchy, crusty, bad attitude, sinful disposition, and life. And I will exchange that for my pure, holy, righteous life. Do you want it? Let me think about that for a second. Think about that. Really? You ever think about that? Yeah, I want an exchange. Yes, I want an exchange. Yes. So put your faith in me. Put your faith in me and believe that I can do that. And you'll have it. All right. That's it. I'll do that. And His life that He transfers into my life changes my very nature so that my will and my actions match His Son, Jesus. Matches. Perfect. But there's still a problem. Because I'm still battling with this old disposition, this old me, this old part of me that hangs on tight and doesn't want to let go. And the flesh inside of me will change my desires away from His desires. Will change my will away from His will. And will have me pursue the things that I want to pursue and not the things that He wants me to pursue. It'll do that if I let it. But to work out my salvation and to work out what He worked in means I need to spend way more time and pay way more attention to His will and what He wants me to do and start cutting off those things about me that I want to do, that I want to go against Him, because the more I allow that into my life, the further I get away from Him. I'm not going to lose my salvation, but my flesh has the capacity to mislead me and to walk me right away from God. If I'm not careful. If I'm not careful, it can choke the life of God right out. God gives us this new pattern. And Paul's writing of this new pattern. What is the new pattern? It's a divine pattern for a divine purpose. It's not imitating Jesus, because that'll get me in a whole lot of problems if I just try to do it like He did. It's called incarnation. God sent His Son to earth in the form of a human being. And His incarnation in that is the Spirit of God is still inside of Him. And He dies on the cross and He's raised again. And then He says, when you put your faith in me, I will give you my Spirit. And He puts the Spirit of the living God in you. It is not your own power that's going to make you righteous, holy, or accessible to God. It is only through the Spirit of God living inside of you. And that is called incarnation. And out of that, He says, He is at work in your will, and He's at work in your actions. And so what we have to do is just allow Him access to our hearts and our minds and our actions and our attitudes, and allow Him to change us. It's God that works in you. It's God. Are you letting it? Because He's not going to take advantage of you. He's not going to impose himself on you. He would never, ever, ever disrespect you that way. Never. So you got to cooperate. You got to cooperate. So what Paul is saying, work out your salvation. Work out what God works in. He's saying salvation is to be expressed. It's not enough to keep it inside. It's not enough to hide it inside. It's not enough to allow him to change you inside and walk away and leave it at that. He says it has to be expressed through cooperating with the Holy Spirit. And there are times when the Holy Spirit, God's life in you, will straight up confront you. Like mom or dad has said to you at some point, what you're doing is wrong and I will not stand for it. And how you respond to that at that point shows how faithful you're being to Him. When God challenges you, are you willing to be obedient? Are you willing to be obedient? It's intentionality, and you have to purposefully choose to follow Him over everything else, including your own flesh, your own desire, your own appetites, your own addictions. Choosing Him. So, my challenge to us today as we wrap this up, what kind of follower are you? Are you the type of Jesus follower that engages in this process of learning and growing and being open to Him challenging you and responding and repenting and asking for forgiveness and changing the way that you live, adjusting and growing and adjusting and growing? I hope you are. And I want to offer this encouragement to those of you that are sitting here like, I'm trying. Paul says, continue to work out what God works in. Continue, like the miner going back into the mine, pulling out those valuable nuggets and bringing them out. Continue. It's a process. Slowly sometimes, but surely, God is changing your will and your actions from the inside out. Amen. It's not all up to you. He's helping. He's helping. And lastly, does your faith in Him make a difference in your life? And does it make a difference in the lives of those around you? How can you be bright, shining like a star if you're not ever having conversations with anybody else? How can you be living in a crooked and warped world if you're not intentionally trying to show God's love to people? How can we? Folks, my biggest concern over the next 2 weeks here is we're not filling up this room with one service on a Sunday. What happens when we go back to 2? The whole reason that we want extra seats in here is so that you can bring people that you're talking to about God's love, to hear about God's love. And to do that, we have to have more seats. Otherwise, it's just a holy huddle. Right? I mean, football season is starting. But my biggest concern is in August when we go back to 2 services. Are we going to have 10 people in one and 15 in another? Who are we inviting? Why aren't we inviting? Why aren't we willing to shine brightly, being pure and blameless, in a world that clearly needs to know the hope of Jesus Christ? You guys can be praying alongside me with that over the next 2 weeks. I really like 2 services just because things really flow better that way for our kids and everybody. But do we need to? I don't know. I hope you say yes. We need to. And I hope that as we're challenged by the words of Paul, that we recognize, man, salvation isn't just what happened inside of you once. Salvation's what's happening inside of me every day. And it's not just about me. It's about people that need to know that. Same love of God that you know.